Welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast about the movies and characters that make us feel seen. We are screaming our way into Halloween with a rising star in horror. My co-host today is a filmmaker and fanatic of all things horror, and that is Gory, Cory McCullough. They have been writing about horror for years now on their Gory Cory blog since they were a teen. They are about to come out of film school. They have been a presence in the genre for years in a really impressive way. And it's incredibly exciting to see the truly next generation of people loving genre, making genre. Cory's newest project is called Welcome Week, a college horror anthology. And college alone can be frightening, but add a relentless masked killer to the mix and it becomes a real nightmare. The killer thing about Welcome Week, it's a college horror produced by actual college students. You can stream that film now, but you could also wait till the end of our conversation, because without any further ado, here's Cory. Cory McCullough, Gory Cory McCullough. What else do the people need to know about you before we get started here today?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, first of all. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a horror blogger, filmmaker. I do pretty much anything in the horror space. I'm specifically interested in like social messaging within horror films and theory within horror. And I've been writing since I was 17 about it. So yeah, and I'm 21 now, so it's been some time.
Well, and one of the most important things to me about getting to do this podcast is to platform sort of like everybody at the same place. Like, I want to have conversations with you in the same place I would have conversations with Chris Landon, in the same places I would have conversations with Paul Feig. Like, you're all filmmakers.
Thank you.
All filmmakers. You're all in the filmmaking community. Like, you know, they have got a lot of kind of notches under their belt, but you're, in a sense, I want to sort of flatten the hierarchy of how we talk, because it's so easy to like take these people that we're so excited about and we have so much work from already.
Those are like the people I want to be.
Of course. But like, you're also in your colleagues. Like, your colleagues, you work in the same industry.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. And I want to emphasize that it is also true, and that your voice and your perspective is as valid as a veteran's would be. So that is why I want to make sure to have just like the broadest cross-section of filmmakers on that I can on the show.
That's so cool. Thank you.
Of course. And now I have to know, what was the thing that first really got its hooks into you to get you interested in genre?
Oh, God, that's so tough. Well, I grew up watching a lot of like, my mom was really into like the Munsters and the Addams Family, so I would watch that a lot. And then I was like a hardcore Scooby-Doo kid. Like, I would rent out Scooby-Doo at Blockbuster all the time as a kid. And I watched a lot of like Cartoon Network. And at that time, I mean, still today, but like especially when I was growing up, Cartoon Network had like super weird, really like kind of scary shows like Courage the Cowardly Dog and Flapjack and like Teen Titans and all that stuff. So I think it got me really interested in these like more genre specific areas. In fourth grade, I went on the Universal horror, or the Universal like tram, studio tour tram, and there's a part where they go by the Bates Motel, and Norman Bates comes out like an actor, and he like brings a knife to the car, and I was obsessed with it. Like, I don't know what it was, but I was obsessed. I was Norman Bates for Halloween that year. It really changed me, and so ever since then I'd been really interested. But I think it wasn't until I watched Scream on MTV when I was like maybe 14 or 15 that I like realized that I really wanted to focus on horror.
Now, Scream I think it ran for 3 seasons, perhaps 4. Mm-hmm. There's a sort of like generational fit around Scream the TV show, where it really resonated with a quite the potent fandom. And I would imagine you've watched the Scream movies now as well. What is it about the TV show that made itself distinct from the movies, and where you watched it where you were like, this is really serving me as a horror fan?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, like, for me personally, the queer representation in Scream MTV, like, really, like, that came to me at a really formative time in my life when I was questioning my identity, and it really helped me understand sort of, like, who I was. And even, like, as I got older, like, I was much young. I think I must have been 12 when I watched Scream MTV, because I remember I was 13 when I came out as Pan, because I had a huge crush on Bex Taylor Klaus.
You could be forgiven for that.
I have like a whole article about it on my blog I wrote a few years ago, because it like really did like change me. And then as I got older and I started questioning my gender, Bex Taylor Klaus once again was like the answer, where I was like, wow, like I think I'm non-binary, after seeing Bex Taylor Klaus's like gender journey. And it was, I think Scream MTV is like really specific to the series, because it's like, number one, as a TV show slasher, that's like so rare to see.
Truly, yeah.
I was mainly a TV kid over a movie kid, just because like it was so much better to like follow these characters through so much time, and you can get really attached to them. And then when they get taken away from you, it's like so painful.
Yeah, yeah.
It almost hits even harder than it does sometimes in the movies. And yeah, it felt a lot younger. It felt a lot more fresh. I remember the reason I watched it is because like the trailer was this like really graphic murder scene of Bella Thorne getting
absolutely, I remember that. Yes.
Music on.
Tyler?
You can't do a slasher movie as a TV series. Slasher movies burn bright and fast.
Nina, are you home?
By the time the first body is found, it's only a matter of time before the bloodbath commences.
And then like the marketing campaign for Scream MTV was literally like, watch Bella Thorne die. And I was like, pop off. Like,
yeah, it was a very See Paris Die, House of Wax 2005 experience.
And like thinking back, I'm like, poor Bella Thorne. Like I can't believe she was so like hated at that point in time, because I love her. But no, yeah, so that was definitely the appeal. And I think like all of these young characters, and they all seemed really cool, and God, their stories were just so tragic and so good.
Willa Fitzgerald was also in that show, and as
Willa
we know,
Fitzgerald is incredible in that show.
Incredible talent who we are seeing now in an incredible movie this year in Strange Darling. So a farm and
for
system for great talent.
Usher. I'm just so like the entire Scream MTV cast, I like will ride or die for them. Like I am so happy to see them cast in anything. They're all so talented. And so that was another thing. I think the cast really made it, because a lot of those characters could be like really annoying if they were played by different people, but I think it was like just the perfect just the perfect casting in general. Especially Johnny Carna and Bex Taylor Klaus, their friendship over that show is just so perfect. It's so good.
Well, now something that I remember, like that I first, or that I am very aware of, that sort of like a theme that I've seen you return to, like talking about like creation of horror and writing about horror is, and filmmaking is, you know, sort of obviously, especially when you were younger, when you were a kid, talking about like let teens have input on teen stories.
Yes, totally.
And so what was it about? Was there something particularly well done about that show where you felt like as a teen viewer that was satisfying something that you wanted from these kinds of stories? And what is it that you kind of perhaps that you look for that you are lacking, perhaps that you see when you kind of let these stakeholders have input on the stories that you're telling about them? Like, is there a thing that you can pinpoint that you've wanted to feel sort of more actual or more tangible in teen representation on screen?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely feel like this was one of those shows that had some of the best teen representation at the time. And it's crazy because like most of these actors were not teens. And I feel like that's usually what sets it apart, is like if you cast younger actors, like usually they can make the dialogue make more sense, or they can improv in a way. But I think like the dialogue here was it felt so real. The relationships felt so real, especially, again, I'm going to go back to Audrey, but like the way that Audrey's like bi-curiousness was handled felt so tangible and so realistic. And I think all of it felt so real, especially to think about these young kids dealing with like so much trauma in general, and then also on top of that having to deal with like being high schoolers and like the stress that comes with that. I think was perfect.
You should be a better partner, Audrey. I'm doing all the work.
Just tell me what you want.
I want you to finally have some answers, killer. They're waiting for you back at Crescent Palm.
No, I'm not going anywhere, you freak.
If you don't go now, the video of you playing with Jake's mangled body gets posted in the comments of your friend's podcast. It's up to you.
Well, that was Audrey was a character that you like in your selections. You said that was one that was a feeling scene pick for you. And then the key, the one that I wanted to localize in on sort of like as our sort of backbone character was sort of heroic, emergent hero of the movie, The Adventures of Sharkboy and Lavagirl.
Yes.
The character of Max. And for as I've mentioned many times on the show, like it's really fun to either experience for the first time or re-experience movies through the lens of being told by someone like, this is who I'm going to talk about. And so thinking about that character as I'm watching them in the terms of the person who's presenting it and watching this from a burgeoning filmmaker, I was like, wow, this Max character makes a lot of sense for somebody like entering a career that is made out of like a life of sort of art and dreaming. So tell me about Max.
Yes. Okay. This movie, like, I swear to God, this movie was made specifically for like 3-year-old me. This was one of the first movies that I remember watching. It was the first movie I remember like analyzing and being like, oh, like maybe there's more to, I mean, not when I was 3, but as I got older and rewatched it, like realizing that maybe there was like more to the story than just what was on screen.
Mm-hmm.
And partially, I think one of the things that really sets it apart is it was co-written by like a 7-year-old.
Really?
Robert Rodriguez's son, racer Max Rodriguez.
Okay, yeah.
Comics that were Sharkboy and Lavagirl that were like inspired by his dreams. And he didn't like, I don't know how much involvement he had in the actual writing, but like he does get a co-writing credit on this film. And I think that's one of the things that makes it feel so much like it belongs to children, because
it really does. No, it really does. In a way that like you saying that makes so much sense, because it almost feels like it's like uncannily for kids.
Yes.
Like it feels like, wow, if a child imagined a movie, this is the product that would have come out of that.
Literally, exactly. And I remember watching it as a kid and being like, this is exactly what I want. Like, it's so perfect. And I remember like making up little stories on the side about the characters and like all of these things, because it just felt like a perfectly balanced story, which I know sounds crazy to say about Sharkboy and Lavagirl, but like it just really did like feel so perfect. And I think the character of Max himself, I mean, at least speaks to me, because I was also an only child. I wasn't like a child of divorce, but my parents did end up getting divorced like later on as I got older. And so like, I think there's like a lot in the story about Max's parents like definitely being on the verge of divorce. And so I think I really picked up on that, like maybe subconsciously. And sort of the way that he like imagines these characters in this world to escape into when he doesn't want to deal with any of the problems in his life, where he's like getting bullied and his parents are clearly like going to be separated. And there's just like a lot going on around him that he doesn't know how to deal with. So he just like puts it into his stories. And I think it's so interesting because I totally did that as a kid too. And so it was one of the first times that I really felt seen in that way of being like, oh, I'm not the only person that does this. You know, I feel like that's definitely one of the biggest reasons that I went on to be a writer and went on to be interested in film, is because like I would just escape into my own little like dreamlands and stories in order to deal with like the things going on in my life. And I think that made me feel really seen as a kid.
That makes a ton of sense. And it all like now that you have like you've made you've been part of Welcome Week, the horror anthology, you've been part of a feature film. There is a line that I pulled out that I made sure to write down from and I think this is from Lavagirl. She tells Max, most dreams don't come true on their own. You have to make them true. And there's this sort of application of like, okay, so there's dreaming and there's creativity and that's fun, but now to make the dream come true, because he has sort of these like half dreams that have not quite fully come to life throughout this like imagination scape that he enters with Sharkboy and Lavagirl. And they're the ones that weren't like quite fully imagined through to completion, whereas Sharkboy and Lavagirl are so real and they're so detailed, and he saw those all the way to the end.
Recognize your dream world, Max? Not really. I feel like I should, but I just don't. It's affecting him too. I thought he would just remember. Remember what? Your dreams. This planet. Us. Your powers. I have powers? More than any of us. Don't you know that? Everything that is, or was, began with a dream. And you dreamt us, Max. Us in this whole place. I did. Every dream you ever had landed right here in Planet Drool.
Now that you have had the experience, like film school and making your own stuff, what is the imaginative or creative or iterative process like in your mind now that you've been involved in the logistical aspect of making the dream come true?
Oh God, so true. I feel like really that the hurdle of making it real really is the problem, because like you can sit and daydream and make your little stories as long as you want, but if there's nothing on paper, it's not going to get done. You got to really commit to it. But I think that's another reason I love this movie, is because it really does teach kids to like write or to like put it on paper, to do anything just to get their ideas out.
Mm-hmm. Back when Twitter was a bit more of a functional ecosystem, one of the more like sort of vocal tentpole figures of the like sort of genre talking community was, and you know he's still around, but C. Robert Cargill, who is the creative partner, like writing partner of the director Scott Derrickson.
His tweets have helped me so much.
And the one that, it might be a pinned tweet of his, or just like one that got a lot of engagement, so it comes up if you search him on Twitter. One of the things I have appreciated, probably the thing I appreciated most that he has said is finish.
Yeah.
If you're writing something, finish it. Because you know what movie's not going to get made? A script that's not done. Well, and it's really sweet to watch the movie and see, because like I like that his dreams aren't necessarily nice to him. Like Lavagirl's like really sweet, and she's trying to kind of manufacture a little bit of kindness too, because she's so afraid that she is interiorly like a dark evil presence. But Sharkboy's just like, I'm gonna kick the shit out of you the whole movie.
You don't want to be too close to him when he explodes. Nice job channeling your anger, Sharky.
I'm literally gonna bully you.
Yeah, I'm gonna bully you because like
Yes.
we're counting on you, Max. Like you're
Yeah.
supposed to be the answer here, and you're not doing it. So me, Tiny Taylor Lautner, somehow only
So good in this movie.
only 3 years before Twilight comes out.
That's crazy.
And
That
he
is
looks like
crazy.
he should be in daycare at this age. It's crazy. But like how the process of Max like coming to realize his imaginative power taking the form of like his real world strength is a really good thing for a movie to have in it that feels like it is so of and for kids. I feel like you can sort of trust the messenger in it.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think like I feel like Max needed that kind of bully who he could also look up to in a way, right? Because he has all these bullies in real life who obviously are not good influences on him, but he needs both the balance of Sharkboy and Lavagirl to push him to actually like do what he needs to do. And I think Sharkboy and Lavagirl, I feel like both represent like parts of his parents. That's something that was like the first thing that I analyzed, I remember in a film.
That's a good point.
Because there's this scene towards the end where like his mom and dad get like swept up into this like tornado, and then Sharkboy and Lavagirl bring them back down. And as you go through the movie, like Max's mom is always wearing like pink or red, and his dad is almost always wearing blue. And in the very end, his mom is wearing a layered blue shirt over a pink shirt. Just saying. And so, but I really think I think Sharkboy and Lavagirl are sort of like what he wishes his parents could be, right? Because his dad is like sort of this pushover, like he's nice and he's great and he loves his dad, but like he wishes his dad would stand up for himself. And his mom is sort of the opposite, where like he wishes his mom was like a little kinder and would like listen to him more and be a little more empathetic. But also like I feel like that fear is there of her like not knowing exactly who she is and feeling like she's a little too mean. And so I feel like they're sort of like these versions of his parents that he like almost wishes he could be, or the way that he sees them. And it's clear in the movie, like those two are not compatible. Like they're friends and they love each other, but like he can't go into the volcano and she can't go into the water, you know? And I feel like that is really telling about like who Max's parents are.
Hey, don't bury us, don't walk away. We are not done yet. We will be right back with more from Cory McCullough. Something wicked this way comes with Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. and some modern day horror icons up next in the conversation docket. And then at the very end, I will have one quick thing before I go. In tribute to the recently passed titan of comedy, a true movie star, a true screen legend, Teri Garr. So rejoice with me about her great career at the end.
What's up, people of the world? It's Mark
and Hal from We Got This with Mark and Hal,
the show that settles those pointless arguments that you and your friends have. Should you put ketchup on a hot dog, or liquid, foam, or bar soap?
And our 500th episode of We Got This with Mark and Hal is available now. It is supersized and a ton of fun.
Yeah, we've got guests coming back from the entire 500 episode run of our show. Some of your favorite Max Fun stars, some of your favorite regular out in other places in the world stars too. Some really fun surprises, and every single one of them had a topic for us to cover.
You can listen to it right now on MaximumFun.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, sleepyheads. Sleeping with Celebrities is your podcast pillow pal. We talk to remarkable people about unremarkable topics, all to help you slow down your brain and drift off to sleep. For instance, the remarkable actor Alan Tudyk.
You hand somebody a yardstick after they've shopped at your general store. The store's name is constantly in your heart because yardsticks become part of the family.
Sleeping with Celebrities, hosted by me, John Moe, on MaximumFun.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Night-night.
And now, in your, like, with all of sort of you've ingested from these kinds of movies, do you find yourself more reflexively, do you align more with a heroic or a triumphant figure, perhaps a final girl sort of situation, or do you find you align more reflexively with a monster? And the, you know, I remember when I was working on Queer for Fear, and how it was how often we would have people talking about like classic horror that they had watched when they grew up, when there was like, you know, a lot of monsters, and the number of people who were like, when Carrie made them all pay, like Carrie was me. Like when Frankenstein was just trying to be alive and no one wanted him to be just because they didn't understand him, that was me. So are you a Jane Levy carrying a chainsaw in a storm of blood, or have you found yourself more like in the Wolf Man, or is it just sort of a circumstantial?
I think I absolutely relate more to the monsters. I relate to Final Girls too. Just, I feel like, I don't know, my whole life I've always been really more interested in villains. And that's one of the reasons also that I got into horror, is because I was really, like, as a kid, I really loved like the Disney villains, because most of them were women, and they're like always like, they serve looks. They're always really interesting. Like, and I just think like they're much more confident. And that was something that I always really wish that I could be, I guess, is like having that confidence to like, because they always stood up for themselves no matter what. And like they bet on themselves, which I always like, I don't know. I was really little, but at the time I loved that.
Yeah.
And that's why I ended up getting into Jennifer's Body, is because I was looking up like female villains. And at the time, like there were so few, and still it's kind of few and far between. So Jennifer's Body really did change my life on that sense. But yeah, I've always felt more represented by the villains. I think like a lot of the times they're queer coded. I think villains often, like the monster is just misunderstood, or it's something that society doesn't understand. If you read Robin Wood, like that's the whole point. So definitely, maybe not all of them for sure, but like I feel like they're also always more fun. Like they have more fun with it most of the time.
I mean, I must add, do tell me about your discovery of Jennifer's Body. I'm playing for the home team on this one. How was Jennifer's Body for you when you discovered that?
I feel like I'm talking to like almost the creator. like you were so close to Diablo Cody. Like that movie, like as I got into it more and as I really started to research, like, because I'm still writing a book on it.
Ooh,
there's a lot of research to be done, because like Megan Fox's career has been crazy, but like I go back and I read these reviews that these men who were like famous New York Times bestselling authors.
Critics of record.
These critics who got paid to write these reviews where they're like, Megan Fox is a bimbo slut bitch. We didn't get to see her tits and fuck her. And like, she's such a, like,
yeah. If you want to see Megan Fox without her clothes on, there are better ways to do it than this movie.
Oh, it literally makes my skin crawl so bad. And like the shit that Megan Fox has been through, like I would not have survived. So anyways, seeing her renaissance in acting has been so nice. And she is so talented and so smart and obviously so gorgeous. Like everything about her. I'm in a class right now that's like we're discussing like the theories of celebrity and fame.
Oh God, I want to sit in on this. This is my hobby.
You should honestly, like you should. It's really good. I can ask my professor. But,
I will come. Do not threaten me with happiness.
It would be so fun. But we were discussing like even from like back in 2009, the way that she talks about how she understood that she was a commodity and
in
how
the
she
moment,
marketed
she knew for everybody calling her a bimbo, she said in every major interview exactly how she knew and was participating in the creation of her persona.
And she was like 23 at the time. And this is something that like we've read like hundreds of pages of theory on in my class to like understand.
Yeah.
And the fact that she just got that and understood it and understood how people like capitalized on her and her body and her looks, like she's so smart. And like she had such a clear understanding of how she existed in the culture at that time. And the fact that people thought she was dumb is like so insane, because that was also a persona she put on. Like, and she was so public about like, yeah, sometimes I just say shit because I want to be in the tabloids. And like people thought she was
they were like, yeah, moron, bimbo, whatever.
Yeah. And it was like she's publicly said in almost every interview that she does this on purpose. Like
this is a perfect segue actually into another figure that you presented, which was Elvira, forgive me.
Yes.
Elvira.
Yes.
Like I watched, it was actually my first time watching, like I'd seen like her older stuff that she had done, like doing it like Movie Macabre. But I finally watched Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, the movie.
So good.
It's flat out so good. I was like, this is like watching a star drag queen today get an hour and a half to go on the funniest Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Tell me about your introduction to Elvira, and I think that the way she embraced with, talked into, played into, and commented on her own persona in a way that anybody else would have been miles behind her trying to comment on it in kind. Tell me about your exposure to Elvira and sort of what that meant to you, like growing up with this kind of figure.
Oh my God, Elvira is
flat out fucking inspiring. Elvira
is everything. Elvira is everything.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get introduced to her until I was much older, like probably COVID. I was probably like 17, 18. And I was getting a lot more into horror, and I'd seen her, like I knew who she was, and I thought as a figure she was interesting, but I didn't really know anything about her. So I watched her movies, and it's crazy how like that movie could totally be made today.
Absolutely it could. It wouldn't have the budget to have a practical fucking explosion at a gas station.
That's crazy. It was so ahead of its time, and it was so feminist that I was gagged. Like I honestly had no idea. And like I liked Elvira and I thought she was cool, but I just had no idea of like how much she would be able to say in a movie from the 80s, I think, right?
Yeah, like 1988, I believe, because it came out a couple years after her show ended, which ran from, I think, 81 to 86.
I was seeing a lot of these things about like women who sexualize themselves, the Madonna horror complex, all of this controversy around that. And then seeing Elvira do it so shamelessly and so geniusly in the 80s, like really changed like everything for me. And she made me feel very seen in like the fact that she just took a stab at it. Like she just joked about everything and she did it so well. And she was so smart with it that I think she's another figure that I just don't think gets enough appreciation for how smart she is, because her jokes are so funny.
Oh my gosh, Elvira, I'm sorry. Are you all right?
Yeah, I think so.
How's your head?
I haven't had any complaints yet.
Excuse me?
Oh, I think I'll live. Believe me, it's not the worst thing that's happened to me today. I've been to every place in this town and no one will give me a job. It's like it's a conspiracy or something.
You know what your problem is? Chastity Pariah.
Ooh, I thought that cleared up.
No, Chastity Pariah. She's the old biddy. She's got the whole town turned against you.
Oh, swell. So now no one will hire me and I'm flat busted. I'm broke.
Queer queen Cassandra Peterson, who only a few
That was
years
crazy.
ago came out that she had been with her partner, a woman, for a very long time. So feeding the gays and being of the gays, we are grateful. And I like that. I think that's such an interesting connection too of like Elvira, who is so incredibly feminine that it becomes like this performance of gender. Like she is performing her gender so hard that it becomes a problem for other people. Which like this town, like in Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, she learns that she has a great aunt who's died and has left her estate. So she goes to Falwell, Massachusetts, which I don't know if it's a real town in Massachusetts, or I wondered halfway through the movie if it was a comment on Jerry Falwell, the televangelist preacher, because the town is like besieged by a moral majority police, basically, who only allow the local cinema to show G-rated movies and can run you out of town for being indecent, kind of thing. And Elvira is just vamping her way through this community, refusing to be any less an ounce of herself than she completely is. And I was watching this being like, this is drag story time. We should be showing Mistress of the Dark to children in elementary school.
Great, just I need a house. I need a house in Falwell like I need a padded bra. I can't live here. I'll go crazy, I tell ya.
Joe. Great. May I offer you a ride?
Buzz off, creep. I'm not in the mood. Oh, it's you, Uncle Vinny.
Yes. Uncle Vinny. I must apologize for my behavior in the office. It's just that your appearance was a bit of a shock to me.
It's okay. My appearance is kind of a shock to everybody.
It's a movie about being, to me, at least the way I read it, it's a movie about being queer in a small town.
Completely.
In a small conservative town, and just being unapologetically queer. And she ends up like changing the whole town. Such a beautiful story of like, the kids aren't homophobic, the kids aren't transphobic, you know, like you are raising them to be that way. And like, if you did not raise your kids to be prejudiced, they wouldn't be.
Oh, there you are. I have been looking all over for you guys. You are not going to believe the good news. Yours truly is hosting a special midnight screening at Fox Theater of one of the worst movies ever made. I mean, it is bad. You know, like bad as in bad, like I'm bad, Jamal, you know it. Hey, what is this? The Invasion of the Body Snatchers? 2 days ago, we were bosom buddies.
It's the principal.
Hey, you're darn right, it's the principal. Friends ought to stick together.
No, I mean the principal, Mr. Cobb.
You'd kill us if we went to your show. Not to mention our parents.
Kill your parents, too?
And like you said, she is performing gender. And that's sort of one of the things that like, when I came out as non-binary, I was like, you know, I feel sort of feminine, but I almost feel feminine in the way a drag queen is feminine, like it's a performance, you know? And so I think seeing her perform that was so interesting and really made me feel seen in that way, because like she's so unapologetically feminine and also so vulgar that it's like, it's just so, it's perfect. She's like exactly what a woman should be and also not.
Well, and it's great to have the, like, it's you have these moments in it where like men like kind of go after her and they try to like no one will put their boobs in the center of a frame like Elvira will. Like at one point she's like reaching
On
into a car and like washing the windows with her boobs. But then that is Elvira's decision to make. But the instant you try to make a move on Elvira to access her, she's like, I'm sorry, no. Like we might be always open, but we are not always doing business over here. And she's just, it's crazy to watch something like this and then to know that like a Tu Wong Fu Thanks for Everything Julie Newmar will come along like in the mid-90s. It was an interesting experience like watching these things that you talked about. Like you said, like coming up with the Scream TV show and it providing more points of identification in the experience of growing up queer and perhaps looking for touch points in that way. And that being a way that all of cinema, and particularly horror cinema, has had to take out of the realm of metaphor and allegory and make more literal at points so that there is actual, like, more diverse representation in actuality, not just in our headcanons, but to be able to go back into the archive, into something like Elvira and be like, you know what? there were some things like, and obviously obviously there's plenty, but like to go back and be reminded that there were people out there fighting for you all along, even before the barrier to entry was just even a little bit lower than it used to be, is a really heartening experience.
It totally is. And it's one of those things where like, I really feel like Elvira is going to be more well liked in my generation later on, which kind of makes me sad because a lot of people don't know who she is. And but I know that once they find this movie, like that's going to be it. It's going to be reclaimed in the same way Jennifer's Body is. And I think
the clips of Elvira need to land on TikTok. They need to land on TikTok.
Genuinely, like the thing is the edits are there. We just need more of them. The edits will get the kids there, I promise.
Because this is our Halloween episode, we're gonna do a couple. It's not like a pop quiz, you guys. We've talked about the questions ahead of time, full disclosure, but like, okay, so here I'm gonna get to our first, so it's just like a little survey. I mean, but the first question, what I'm gonna phrase it as is, in post, let's say, because I want to make this challenging, in the post sort of boom of slashers, let's say 2010 onward, who are a couple of your defining survivor girl or survivor like hero figures in horror cinema?
I would say Samara Weaving in Ready or Not for sure.
Thank you. Fuck out of here. What the fuck is wrong with you? You fucking animal, you piece of shit, little tiny dick licker fucking asshole fucking eye.
Maxine definitely, like, I guess she could kind of get into both, like being sort of an anti-hero, but I think Maxine is like really beloved and really hits as one of those final girls.
Drop it! Buster. What were you gonna do, huh?
Nothing. I was just playing around.
Well, we're playing now.
Melissa Barrera will always be number one.
Melissa Barrera in the final act of Scream 5, the like, but what about my ending? Like, her big finish in that movie is one of my favorite character like runs in any scary movie in years and years.
What about my ending?
Here it comes.
She's just like, it's like no contest. Like she is the final girl of the decade, I feel.
Love.
And I really hope we get to see her cast more. I was so sad to see her fired from Scream. And I'm trying to think of who else. I feel like there were so many. Keke Palmer.
Oh, Keke Palmer for sure.
It's in a cloud. It's in a cloud.
OJ! It's in the cloud!
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think this segues me into my second of two questions, which again we also discussed ahead of time, which is we have the canon, we have the classics as they are. There's a Psycho in there, there's a Scream in there, there's a Night of the Living Dead in there, like those kinds of movies, the foregone conclusion movies. When people are like, what are some entries for you in the new horror canon where you would say, like, if we're not talking about these, we are not talking about the building blocks of the genre?
I think definitely Hereditary. Anything Ari Aster, I feel like is very much like the number one to this day. Anytime I mention horror, like people are going to bring up Hereditary.
Yes, I think that's fair.
Hereditary, I think really changed things. And then recently The Substance.
I think it's making a strong case.
I think that it will, especially like, I think The Substance and Longlegs from this year are going to be like really the standout ones that like for years and years and years, I think people will talk about. Anything Jordan Peele, but specifically Get Out, changed the genre entirely. It's incredible. One of the best movies ever made. And like, I think we're going to see Jordan Peele's influence for a long, long time. And I hope we do. And I also think I Saw the TV Glow.
Okay.
Is another one that we're seeing a lot of queer horror, and I think seeing how queer people function in the horror space is going to really change a lot of the future of film. And anything made by Alice Mayo McKay. If you haven't watched anything by Alice Mayo McKay.
I haven't. What are some titles?
We've got So Vam, Bad Girl Boogie, T-Blockers, Satanic Panic.
T-Blockers. Okay, I have seen T-Blockers.
T-Blockers.
Yes.
T-Blockers is going to change the world. Like, I know it. One of the best filmmakers I've seen of our generation, and she is able to work with such low budgets and create such incredible stories. And she usually tackles a different subgenre every time. Her newest one is called Carnage for Christmas, and it's a Christmas movie.
Wow.
And Vera Drew, who did People's Joker, which is another one that I think is definitely up there. People's Joker, I think, is really going to change things. They worked on it together, and it was so good. And yeah, love her. Like, she's definitely the next generation of like people say that she's like the next John Waters, and I like couldn't agree more. Amazing. And I can't wait to see what she makes next, because everything she does is like so sick. But yeah, anything by her. I think we're really seeing this move from like, you know, remakes and reboots into like original low budget stories, especially now with TikTok. Like, people want to see these stories made for no money. They want to see like these new creators who have these big ideas, and we don't need to see like the 50th Marvel movie. You know, we want to see something that represents us, and we want to see art. We want to see like things that aren't like completely destroyed by studios, and stories that are told by the artist making them, even if they're not perfect.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that's the bow. I think that's the bow on the conversation. Cory, this was just like exactly the kind of conversation that I hoped I would get to have with you, and I so appreciate you taking the time to have it. I think your voice is really important, and
thank you.
I know that this as a job can be really tough, but I really hope you stick with it, because I'm really excited to continue seeing what you have to say in various languages, visual, spoken, and otherwise. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love queening out with you, Jordan. It's so fun.
Thank you so much to Cory McCullough. We appreciate your time, we appreciate your work, and we appreciate that you are out there on the front lines for Gen Z, bringing horror into the lives of us all for generations to come. You can creep on over to Cory's blog at gorycory.net, and you can stream Welcome Week, a college horror anthology, right now. Stream it for Halloween, stream it for November, stream it all year round. As we know, there's no such thing as a January movie anymore, and there's no such thing as horror season. It's just going all of the time. And now, that one quick thing I promised before I go. One of my favorite actors of all time, no kidding, passed away this very week. The singular Teri Garr. I grew up thinking Teri Garr was one of the coolest, prettiest, funniest people ever. And Mr. Mom was a movie that played on a loop in our house. Hey, guys, guess what? Michael Keaton, not the star of that movie, despite being the titular Mr. Mom. The star is Teri Garr. I would say, heart and soul of the movie Tootsie. Inga, in these incredible Inga, in Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein, Ronnie Neary in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, anything that Teri Garr was in. She was in Oh God, with George Sanders. Anything that Teri Garr was in, she worked with comedy heroes. Like I said, Mel Brooks, Gene Wilder. Tootsie is a classic in its own right. They're just Close Encounters of the Third Kind. My God, Steven Spielberg. Teri Garr was as dynamic and interesting and funny an actor as ever there was. And even though appreciated, certainly did not get the regard that so many of her male co-stars did, that she was acting alongside. But that was a goddamn actor, that Teri Garr. That was a movie star. Her career was made shorter by an MS diagnosis. I believe that was in the early 2000s. So she wasn't able to continue working, as we see so many of the greats do into their latest years, still being vital and incredible, working in projects alongside visionary directors. So in that regard, we had to send a kind of farewell to Teri Garr too soon. And then when she was interviewed sort of around the years of her retirement from screen, she also published a memoir. She was very candid. She's very frank in interviews about how she knew women were shortchanged in Hollywood, particularly when she was coming up in the 1970s, in the 1980s. She spoke on the sexism that she endured, the misogyny that she felt limited her to parts. Like she was coming to sort of like the aggrieved girlfriend or housewife or wife, more just generally, and how those were the parts. There's this sort of devastating quote from her in this definitive interview she did with the AV Club, where she talks about like, these are the parts afforded to me in this career and in this life. And I have seen so many. It's been wonderful to see so many wonderful Teri Garr tributes. Friend of the pod, Paul Feig, was posting his own remembrances of her and how wonderful, and he got the chance to work with her, and she was every bit as amazing as you hoped and knew she would be, if you ever thought about meeting her in your own life. And I have missed Teri Garr in my movies and TV for a long time. And I feel like she would have been such a force in like the era of peak TV that happened. Like some brilliant person, or just some person with goddamn common sense, would have come around and been like, who we haven't seen enough of? Teri Garr. Of course I'm going to write a part for Teri Garr. I feel like Ryan Murphy would have slotted Teri Garr into his universe of honoring actresses in their mature eras. We never got enough of her. We could have never had enough of her. She was too great to have run any kind of course to wear out her welcome. We love Teri Garr. We love Teri Garr's work. And I hope somehow sufficient messages of appreciation were conveyed to her, even after she had to stop working. So this episode is dedicated to Teri Garr. We love you and thank you. And that is our show. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at FeelingSeenPod, or send us an email at feelingseen@MaximumFun.org. If you want to follow me, I'm Jorcru on Twitter. That's JORCRU. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Danielle Huesias. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun. Happy Halloween, everybody, and stay safe and stay spooked.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows, supported directly by you.